I currently work within an organization. And within that organization, I can still think and act entrepreneurially. And for about 2.5 years, coming out of running my father's business, being the president of a company, owning a portion of that company, and then rolling a portion of that company into the private equity firm, witnessing for about 8 months this company grow and scale and really lose its sense of the entrepreneurial flavor that my father and I were injecting into the company on a daily basis. And I saw that sort of flavor peter away. And then for the next 2.5 years, I sort of floundered around my career. I started working as a consultant. I built a consulting company as a managing principal. I enjoyed what I was doing. I got some clients and I was experimenting. And I was trying to figure out what I enjoyed, but also what I was good at and what I can provide in a scaled kind of way for clients. And I share that in essence of now I've moved into what I would consider a sweet spot in an academic position, if you would, within a university that has a mass amount of resources. And I believe that some of my skills, gifts, talents, whatever that may be, are best utilized in a organization that is already established. Meaning, at this point in my career, I don't have to go and seek out people to influence. I don't have to go out and find clients and whatnot because you are my clients. You are my customers. I want to do the best I can to be an educator to you and refine my skills to maybe every once in a while go work with clients. And that is a perfectly permissible grounds to think and act entrepreneurially. And I'm going to make that case in the next little bit. This class is a class that is designed for something called experiential learning. So the reason why you have these capstone projects, the reason why you're participating as a team, and the reason why these classes are not so structured is intentional. It's meant to give you this practical, real world, if you would, experience so that you can play around. You can experiment with different ideas. You can take something you enjoy learning from me. You can dispense with things that you don't really find interesting. And most importantly, and I think this is a strategic competitive advantage and certainly a niche, if you would, of what provides and what the power of the student base is. And let me be very clear with how I articulate this because I'm a big believer in it. I've been in traditional colleges and universities in the past, and the traditional colleges and universities tend to have what you would call a full-time student. And I think the full-time student concept, it was great maybe 30, 40, 50 years ago, 20 years ago, if you would. But now I think the advantage is to be a student that's capable of immediately applying what they learn in trade, in an organization, and finding ways to leverage technology, classes, and apply it immediately. And the opportunity to apply it that is not only working, but is also going to school is incredible. And you can do that here. You don't have to create your own business and start from scratch. You can immediately take what you learn and you can apply it to your organization, to your family, to your community, to your church group, to your friend group, whatever that looks like, if you can think and act entrepreneurially. And I'm going to talk about some of the reasons why I believe that every corporation, whether they know it or not, is going to fail or is going to eventually go through the organizational life cycle and move towards the decline phase if they cannot incentivize people like you to think and act entrepreneurially within their company. And I'll talk about why. So right now we have um, these concepts within companies. So the internal environment within a company, what happens is people are not equipped with the skills and knowledge. They don't have the facilities. They might not be, the jobs might not be designed appropriately. So they have to reshuffle responsibilities. There's a lot of accidents. There's scandals. People steal stuff. There's politics within organizations. There's a new broom at the top, meaning they hire a new CEO and that new CEO makes changes or does something different. There's new products that are offered. There's new innovations that take place within these companies. And these are all internal factors. And typically, what happens within companies is these internal factors can be controlled by the managers or by the executives. It's something that you have more control of than what we're going to talk about next. And a lot of people think, and understandably think, that change comes from these internal factors. The change within an organization is because of new responsibilities, a lack of skills, new facilities, new products and services, whatever that may look like. But what I'm going to argue is that there is so much more turbulence. You know, you're on a plane and you experience this turbulence coming from the external environment and witnessing the things that happen in the external environment and being attuned to them and being something called ambidextrous. Ambidextrous means you see what you're currently doing, but you're also working on new things at the same time. It's sort of being like a switch hitter. You're ambidextrous. You can hit with your left hand, you can hit with your right hand. Organizations have to understand that when they found a groove or when they find something that's working, eventually the external environment is going to change that. It's going to disrupt that. So it's not good enough just to do what we did yesterday. It's not good enough just to do what we did the day before or do the things that have worked for us in the past. We have to be ambidextrous. We have to search for new things at the same time as we're doing other things. So quickly, I won't get into this, but the factors in the external environment that create issues within the company. And again, the purpose of me telling you this and going through this is not to it's to set the table for something that you can do or the conversation you can have with your boss, your superior, your manager at your work right now. If you're operating a franchise, if you're in the insurance business and you know the franchisor, you can talk about ways in which that this franchise can act entrepreneurially because we know that artificial intelligence is looming. We know that robotics are deep into the research and development phase. We know that these deadly pandemics are capable of making their way to our country and infiltrating our social life. We know that our the pressure to compete in the external environment, the legal and regulatory environment, the technology the technology changes that are happening right now are rapid and serious, and it's leading to additional turbulence, not less turbulence, but more turbulence. So corporations are dealing with technology, they're dealing with customer issues, they're dealing with competitor issues, they're dealing with legal, regulatory, and ethical issues, all coming towards the company. So this is not a bad thing. And if for whatever reason you're thinking, wow, this is a doom and gloom or something that's not good for a company, let me tell you something. The opportunities lie in understanding, recognizing, and seeing the trends in the external environment. I'm begging people that I currently work with right now within an institution, if you would, to pay attention not to, how do you say, the policies and procedures about how we did it yesterday, but paying attention to the students' needs and the way in which they're learning and developing on their own. Meaning, if we as educators can't clearly engage students on platforms that they like to engage on, then what makes us think that we're going to stand out? What makes us think that we can have influence in their lives? We have to be a part of it. We have to have the same playmates and playgrounds. We have to be playing on the same field. And a lot of times there's too much of a gap there. And the reason why I'm saying this is there's only going to be more of a gap. There's only going to be more change. There's only going to be more customer customization, more of a need to delight our customers, more of a pressure from the external that's going to be changing with technology. And what does that mean to us as students? What does that mean to us as companies? What does that mean to us as employees? And how can we use this capstone project that we're working on right now to shift the way we think about our everyday lives and start using these thought processes and having these team meetings, not about what if, or the what if is a good question, but let's go ahead and try it. Why not take this? And I love the idea with the soccer camp with people who have disabilities. I think it's a fascinating concept. And I think you can use that in a lot of different contexts. It doesn't have to just be a brand new company or a new LLC. I think that can be used within existing organizations. I think you can think about ways to bring in people with disabilities into your company to complete tasks and maybe carve out job descriptions that are catered to their competencies. Why not work with the Des Moines Foundation? Why not see ways that you can move in this space today? So when you look out 10 years, what do you expect? How can we delight and amaze customers more than we do today? More changes or less changes? And what is going to be your response? And what are we learning now in this course? And what if you learned through your education that can immediately be applied? If external is changing, the internal strategy needs to change. It has to be ongoing, right fit, right structure, right processes. So a lot of times what happens if you get brought into an organization, the organization is going to say, okay, we got an issue. Okay, cool. Let's do an assessment. Let's figure out what this issue is. Let's gauge your employee engagement. Let's gauge your job satisfaction. Let's see how committed your employees are to the organization. And then based on this information, we're going to have a series of interventions. And these interventions are going to look like, unbundling different products, downsizing different departments, right sizing certain departments. Maybe you have to restructure. Maybe instead of centralizing, you need to be decentralized. If you've taken management classes, these terminologies, it's like a consultant's paradise, a strategic alliance. Let's have business process reengineering. That's a fun one. Let's go through a lean engineering process or a lean manufacturing assessment. And this is a lot of times how we look at fixing organizations. How I'm going to argue is behind all of this, behind everything that I have said at this point, is thinking and acting entrepreneurially. And it's the essence of corporate entrepreneurship. And the question remains is why don't we see corporate entrepreneurship as the solution And the most competitive, the number one way to achieve a sustainable competitive advantage is to foster that spirit within our existing company. It's almost, in some ways, it is antithetical. It doesn't make sense. And it doesn't fit within the existing approach within a company. And why? Because people think that entrepreneurship is all about starting businesses, and it's not. Entrepreneurship is the process of gathering resources to exploit or to leverage those resources to achieve an opportunity within an organization or within a private business. Doesn't matter. There's no, I have to start a business to be an entrepreneur concept. So companies don't have all the right answers. There's no textbooks to answer all these questions. A lot of this is just experimentation. The right sizing and downsizing and the restructuring and the strategic alliances. These are just ways in which people experiment, which is not a bad thing, on how can we make this company better. I think I mentioned this quote to you all before from IBM. There was a time where this executive from IBM was being interviewed, and it was a bit of a contentious interview. And he said, "You know, when I look at IBM, I see you all the time. You're restructuring." And the guy said from IBM, he said, "Well, if we haven't restructured lately, we should probably restructure." Meaning, it doesn't. We don't restructure because we're a company. We restructure because demands and the need of the external environment. And that's a person who's thinking entrepreneurially. So the point, external complexity leads to internal changes, and that's driven by customers, technology, markets. And the bottom line is sustainable competitive advantage. Where do we get this? And the answer that I'm arguing tonight is the entrepreneurial imperative is a persistent sense of urgency. Managers within an organization tend to become reactive by responding to the changes brought about by the external environment, but let entrepreneurial fires within the company dwindle and diminish. So, meaning the bigger the company gets, the less entrepreneurial it is. And so the answer isn't acting like a typical manager. The answer is acting like an entrepreneurial manager. So here's I juxtapose the manager concepts and some of the competencies that managers have to the entrepreneur. And let me try to make this relevant for you as well and how you can apply this to your company that you're working for. You're getting together with a group of people and you're hashing out issues that are being baked into the creation of a business to satisfy the needs of a class. If you can do that constructively within your own organization and try to solve a series of problems, not just one problem, but a series of problems with, internal venturing, maybe creating an LLC that the company owns, but it's separate, it's ran separately. That would be a similar project. That's called corporate venturing. You can do that within your existing company if you have a good plan and you articulate it in a reasonable fashion and you're smart about it. So a manager is a planner, strategist, an organizer, a staffer, a motivator, a budgeter, evaluator, coordinator, and supervisor. These are just some of the many words that people use to describe what a manager is. There's way more than that, but the entrepreneur is a visionary, opportunity seeker, creator, innovator, calculated risk taker, not a risk taker, but a calculated risk taker, a resource leverager, a change agent, active and adaptive concept implementer. So the essence of both of these, not one or the other, but both of these is the entrepreneurial manager. My wife works with Baptist Health, and I plan on giving a similar presentation at some point, hopefully to the executive team at Baptist Health to help them because they already know, and I don't want to say anything. They have a great organization, but what hopefully they see is a trend towards patient needs and understanding that patients' needs are changing. That hospitals are huge institutions that have really been protected, sort of a mansion type of institution over many, many, many years. But the patient experience in preventative medicine and entrepreneurial activity and health science and med tech is going to revolutionize the healthcare industry. The healthcare industry is highly regulated. It's going to be decentralized. It's going to be less regulated because it has to. It's almost like copyright infringement nowadays because of artificial intelligence and because of these deep fakes and all these kind of things. It's very difficult to regulate that. People are taking peptides, not peptides, all sorts of different supplements that will sustain them and their energy better than they've ever known about before. And I'm just trying to pull out some of these Huberman Lab podcast things that I've been listening to. But the biotech industry has created these supplements that are unbelievable. And Vitamin Shop has really niched themselves in this market. But think about CBD, think about protein, just in general. There's going to be things much better than that go for longevity, go for skincare, and they have yet to be released, but they're being released by entrepreneurs. So again, the point is healthcare space is going to change and we're going to need to manage hospitals differently. We're going to need to manage healthcare institutions differently moving forward. And it's going to require the entrepreneurial manager. And it's going to require people like you to step in and say, hey, that one time in capstone class, when I was talking to Professor Kershner, when I heard about this thing, I think we need to think differently about this concept of picking up the phone and just responding to our customers' needs. Why don't we figure out how those customers never have to call us anymore because their needs are being met instantaneously? What if? What if we can create a concept within our existing organization that solves a litany of problems by thinking differently? So managers focus more on the current situation and how to improve efficiency and effectiveness, while entrepreneurs focus less on the current situation and more about what can be. But so, what does a sustainable competitive advantage mean these days? It means being more flexible, more adaptable, having more speed, more fleet of foot, being able to make decisions quicker. One of the realities, and we'll talk about it in a minute, of being a startup entrepreneur versus being a corporate entrepreneur is if you're a startup entrepreneur, you can make decisions and you can implement changes right now, today. You know, what the podcast I was saying before class, I used 11 Labs. I used Notebook, Google Notebook LM. I told you I used that Gamma to create some of those slides. And I instantaneously decided that I was going to publish this on my own platform that I own and control for a podcast. And it was an easy decision to make. And the reason why I'm saying that is because those kinds of decisions, if I was going to change the curriculum, if I was going to plug corporate entrepreneurship in the curriculum at a college, you know how long it would take for me to do that and for me to get that through the bureaucracy of the organization? A long time. So why? Being more fleet of foot means that we're capable of doing things and implementing things faster. A lot of the concepts around corporate entrepreneurship is that it's sort of the ask for forgiveness and not permission, is you have to move sometimes under the radar. And then eventually when somebody says, hey, you can't do that, you say, oh, I didn't know I couldn't do that. But hey, sales are up 40%. Or hey, customer satisfaction is up 10% because of what I did. And are you still going to look at me and tell me that I can't do that? Your boss is actually going to say, no, you've just been promoted. You know, yes, you could do that, but you did it and you achieved the goal and you did it in a way that was entrepreneurial. And I'm not, obviously, that could get people in trouble. So I want to be hesitant with how I say that, but I think you understand what I mean. If you know that what you're doing is there's an aggressiveness component to it, there's an integrity driven component to it, and there's innovation, and you can make that change and you know it's going to add value to the customer or to the employees, what's stopping you from doing that? And again, these are the thoughts to put into your mind if you have the ability to design an entrepreneur organization. Just as much as an entrepreneur employee, I want you to think of speed as strategy and have something called a healthy dissatisfaction. If you're walking down the street with an entrepreneur, I think we've said this before, they're going to critique things, analyze things, and say, hey, there's a better way to do that. Hey, if you designed your shop window a little bit differently over here, I think you would get more attention. If you walk into a barber shop, you're going to notice some hair clippings on the floor. If you're like me and you go to a car dealership and you interact with some of the salespeople, you're going to say to yourself, I would never hire that salesperson to work for my organization ever because he presented himself wrong. He was kind of shady. I saw him outside smoking a cigarette and he kind of came at me in an aggressive fashion. You're just going to know. And that's how entrepreneurs think. So entrepreneurial firm is one that engages in product market innovation, undertakes somewhat risky ventures, and is first to come up with proactive innovations, beating competitors to the punch. A non-entrepreneurial firm is one that innovates very little, is highly risk averse, and imitates the moves of competitors instead of leading the way. A guy named Danny Miller, who I think came up with this concept called entrepreneurial orientation. So, what is entrepreneurship? And we defined this earlier, and I want you to really sit on this for a second because we're going to move into this when it comes to corporate entrepreneurship because you're going to see there's very little difference. What is entrepreneurship? An encompassing definition of entrepreneurship is the process of creating value by bringing together a unique combination of resources to exploit an opportunity. And what is it? What's corporate entrepreneurship? Listen to the definition right next to it and know that there's really very little difference. Corporate entrepreneurship is a term used to describe entrepreneurial behavior inside established mid-sized and large organizations. So you're just doing this, and you're doing entrepreneurship as a process of creating value within an established organization. So other popular terms of corporate entrepreneurship is organizational entrepreneurship, intrapreneurship, and corporate venturing. So how corporate entrepreneurship differs, corporate entrepreneurship entrepreneurs face three major challenges linked to the need for inter-organizational political skills: achieving credibility or legitimacy for the concept and the entrepreneurial team, obtaining resources, and overcoming inertia and resistance. So let me just talk about those three things for a second. We'll do two more slides and then we'll be done. But if you're going to start making bold entrepreneurial moves within your company, you would probably think that you're going to have some credibility to you or legitimacy for why you're making these bold moves. So don't just do it haphazardly. Do it with intention, with research, with understanding, with thinking, with possibly building a coalition and collaborating with other people who can hold you accountable to your ideas. And so you're not just jumping off the cliff, but at the same time, you're not just stuck in the mud. You're somewhere in between. You're moving, but you're not moving haphazardly. You're not moving with extra zealousness. You're moving strategically and not just unintentionally. So that's really what that means, because you have to have some level of credibility. Obtaining resources is hard. So if you're working within an organization right now and you have a finance department, or you have, say, an accounting department, sometimes they may see your idea and say, wow, that's great, but we don't have the money for it. Or the HR may see that idea and say, wow, I would really love to try this new way of incentivizing people, but we've always done it this way. So I'm not gonna give you the permission to change that policy. So how do you go about that? How do you get the resources you need to accomplish your initiatives? And if we had more time, I'd explain that to you. But those are some of the roadblocks to what would be considered corporate entrepreneurship. The other one, inertia, really means that you're stuck. Inertia is we're moving in one direction, and it's very hard to change the direction because the way in which we're moving in this direction is really a lot of mass and a lot of volume is moving at a consistent speed. So to change that, it's gonna take some tenacity, some chutzpah in order to do that. And we have to figure out ways to overcome that and certainly resist it. So I also overheard a story today from my wife. She said that she's trying to change a policy. And in order to change this policy, she did a lot of research on how other hospitals have this policy implemented. And she took a little bit of that, a little bit of this, and there have been many cases that indicate the fact that this policy needs to be changed. And just in her efforts, which she spent a ton of time doing it, and in her efforts trying to change a policy that everybody knows needs to be changed, she's getting pushback. People just like to disagree and they like to challenge, but they don't really want to do anything about it. And they may not even have a solution. But just know that as you go about these changes, that you're going to receive some resistance to these changes. All right. So this is let me see if I can get to these questions and then we'll be done. So here are my questions to you, just to consider. Maybe if you want to, you can talk about with your group. But really, just as we end this topic of what does it mean to be a corporate entrepreneur, hopefully I've convinced you that it's absolutely imperative. And I don't say this from a um, I tend to believe that I do have an intuitive thought process. And I've been exposed to a multitude of different businesses and different environments, and plus some of the literature that I've seen. Plus, as you can see, I'm a big believer in technology. Things are changing so quickly. So for you to embrace this concept and to convince those around you in your company that we have to start moving more fleet of foot, be it a strategy. We have to think more entrepreneurially. How can we change? How can we be different? How can we restructure with intention? What pressures are happening from the external environment that we can capitalize on? Good things that we can capitalize on. Here's some other questions. Does your desire to make things work better occupy much of your time as fulfilling your duty to maintain them the way they are? So it's difficult to maintain things just the way they are because of entropy. And it's difficult to make things better because of inertia. So these two forces are constantly working against you. Interesting question. Number two, do you get excited about what you are doing at work? Very important question. As you can see, I love what I do. I love education. I love reading your capstone projects. I love listening to your case studies. I love seeing you develop as students and as professionals is a joy to me. And I want to do everything I can outside of this classroom to prepare for helping you while I have this time with you in the classroom. Do you get excited about what you do at work? Question three, do you think about new business ideas while driving or work or while driving to work or taking a shower? Do you? I can't stop thinking about things I'm going to do or things that I'm going to change or this client that I have coming up on Friday that I'm going to meet with. These are sometimes it could be bad, but do you think about that stuff? Number four, can you visualize concrete steps for action when you consider ways to make a new idea happen? Not just dreaming, but doing. Number five, do you get in trouble from time to time for doing things that exceed your authority? Interesting one. It it doesn't make you a rebel. It doesn't make you an outlaw. To every once in a while within an organization, maybe you didn't have authority to tell that staff member to go ahead and take that extra tool because you knew that they needed it for a job and they didn't have to sign it out. If you got caught doing that and the intention was pure and the guy got the job done, and next thing you know, you reinvented a new way to get tools signed out, please don't let it stop you. All right. Are you able to keep your ideas undercover, suppressing your urge to tell everyone about them until you have tested them and developed a plan for implementation? That's a pretty interesting one. Seven. is, have you successfully pushed through bleak times when something you were working on looked as if it might fail? Because that's another theme of entrepreneurship, being okay with failure. It's taking enough swings at the plate, not so that your batting average is 500, which is usually what happens to batters in the beginning of the season, but so that your batting average is 350 because you've taken 1,000 swings at the plate and 350 of them were hits. 350 hits. That's a great deal when it comes to trying something new and failing. And if you think about, let's say, cancer research doctors and people who are trying to cure cancer, all different types of cancer, every single time they fail because they haven't found a cure yet, do you think that they say to themselves, "Wow, we should just quit. Wow, we shouldn't have tried to begin with. We should have never woke up this morning and failed." No, they don't say that. Every single time they fail, they say, "Wow, that was tough, but we are now further along than we were before, and we've made progress." That's how they look at failure, and they don't quit. Do you have a network of friends at work you can count on for help? Do you get easily annoyed by others' incompetent attempts to execute parts of your ideas? Can you consider trying to overcome a natural perfectionist tendency to do all the work yourself and share the responsibility for your ideas with a team? Would you be willing to give up some salary? This is an interesting one, in exchange for a chance to try out your business idea if the rewards for success were adequate. You're giving up some of your salary, but you were incentivized differently and you're trying out new business ideas with the existing resources within the company. And if you're willing to do that, then hey, that demonstrates some good entrepreneurial flair. All right, I got one quick story and then I will pass it along to you guys to have your meetings. Let me stop sharing. So I was on told this story a couple times, but I was on a plane and I was headed to Dallas, and there was a gentleman on the plane that was laying over in Dallas and flying to Hawaii, and I was having a conversation with him, and he actually started talking to me. I was busy doing whatever I was doing, and sometimes I just want to be left alone in some ways. But he struck up a conversation with me, and he was explaining to me that he, at his company, just created a new product that made the company over $10 million. And this was over the course of a couple of years. And the company was thanking him by sending him off to Hawaii. He was gonna, I think his family was gonna fly down there and they were gonna give him an award and they were gonna give him maybe a little bit of a bonus. And I looked at him, I said, wow, what are you gonna do next? Are you gonna go start your own company? Um, and also, like, aren't you kind of annoyed that they're just giving you a bonus and they're giving you a flight down to Hawaii because it sounds like you made them a lot of money? And he said, "No, I'm not gonna start my own company, and I actually really love where I work, and yeah, I understand that the organization, made a lot of money." He said, "But I could have never done what I did, and it have the influence it has and the scale that it has if I wasn't working within that organization." Meaning the departments that he was able to have access to, the interdependency with the other teams, the coalition that he was able to build, and the resources that this company had enabled him to do what he did to have the impact that it had. It was because he worked in a big company and he still was acting entrepreneurially. So my goal with that story is to explain to you that not every entrepreneur needs to start their own company. Not every person in this group right here needs to look at this business idea or project idea and think that there needs to be a launching point here. There's things you can learn now with having these conversations and hashing out this experiential learning concept that you can apply immediately within any organization, within any community group. And that's my goal with talking to you a little bit about that today. So I